Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's Chief Learning Officer webinar. My name is Alec, and as always, I'm here to help answer any of your general or technical questions that may come up. But before we get started, I'm going to cover a couple of things you need to know about the session today. There's no dial-in number, so all audio will be streamed to you through your computer speakers or headphones. If you're unable to listen right now, this is recorded, and you will receive a link to that recording afterwards. You can submit questions at any point during today's presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon. Feel free, like I said, at any point to submit your questions. Click that icon, type your question in, and click submit. If it's content related, we should have a little bit of time for questions at the end, and we'll pull a couple of attendee questions at that point. And if it's a technical question, I will have an answer for you that should appear on your screen shortly after you submit. We already have a bunch of people in here, and they're already doing this, but if you want, feel free to familiarize yourself with that Q&A tool and let us know where you're joining from. Like I said, we have people already letting us know that. So from Arizona, Washington, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Canada, Arizona again. So welcome everybody, and like I said, feel free to familiarize yourself with that tool by letting us know where you're joining from. You can download a PDF of the slide deck right now by clicking on the handouts icon located on the right-hand side of your screen. You can pull down that PDF to take notes if you'd like. Like I said, this webinar is being recorded. You're going to receive access to that recording about 24 hours after the conclusion of this event. That will come from HTM Events, and in that same email, you'll have your HRCI and SHRM certification codes for today's event. Again, your HRCI and SHRM certification codes will come tomorrow in your email along with that recording. All right, so I'm excited for today's event. I'm excited for our guest. Our guest is Jeff Salen. Jeff is a Learning Solutions Consultant in the Learning and Creative Services Department at D2L, today's sponsor. He's a passionate educator focusing on scenario-based learning, gamification, and competency-based education. And a little thing about Jeff personally, he's into audio engineering, music, triathlons, and all things food. So I can get on board with that as well. So let's go ahead and get things started, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Alex. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to spend the next 45 minutes or so walking through the Skills Gap Challenge and how micro-credentialing can help solve that. So I'm just going to test out my ability to scroll here. Great. So for our agenda today, the first thing I'd like to do is spend just a little bit of time identifying some of the terminology we'll be using. So what is the skills gap? How can we address the gap? What are organizations doing to address that gap? What are open badges and how do they work? What challenges can these badges solve? What types of badges should we create? So it should be a very tight, streamlined thing. As a former instructional designer with D2L for the last 7 years, I tend to stray towards course design strategies and stuff. So I won't be speaking at a high level today about micro-credentialing and open badges. I'll be drilling into some best practices that I've found talking to dozens and dozens of clients. This year has really been for me the get up on my high horse and really try to promote micro-credentials across organizations, and we're seeing a really good uptake in that through our Brightspace platform, and I hope by the end of this you come away with a few recommended ideas that you can make the most of to start working with open badges at your organization. So just to get started, what is the skills gap? I mean, we've been talking about this for a lot of years in the L&D world, but for the individual, it's the gap between the skills that I currently have and the skills that I need to do work now and in the future. So it's the things that I currently possess, but what I really need now to be successful and in the future. For the organization, it's the difference between the skills that we want or need and the skills that the workforce is actually offering. So SHRM and many other organizations, consulting groups have done a lot of research into the skills gap. The one that I find most pertinent for the talk today to kind of summarize these things was from Adecco, and what they found when they reached out to 500 different senior executives across the US was that, yes, there's a skills gap, but what I found interesting was it wasn't necessarily in the areas that I would have thought, you know, on the technical front, on the software skills and things like that. In fact, what they found was that 44% of them responded by saying it's the 4 C's that we are critically missing from our employees these days. And those 4 C's are communication, creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration. So they still identified those technical leadership and software skills as an issue, but if we look at the numbers, they clearly are calling out the fact that these 4 C's are an area of issue where there is a gap between the needs of the organization and the needs of the individual. And when I go out and I look at the world of employment around us, a recent example that I saw for an instructional design position at another company, you can see in the very first qualification, they're looking for some type of educational degree in instructional design or education or something like that. The compulsory 1 to 3 years of corporate training in that group. But then if we look at the next 6 bullets, what we end up seeing is that they're asking for people that are self-motivated with assertive personalities, ability to adapt quickly, excellent communication skills, building client relationships, effective time management, problem-solving skills, attention to detail, problem solving, and team-oriented with strong interpersonal skills. All of these are these durable skills. So everybody is using this term soft skills. A lot of recent webinars that I've been attending and conferences that I've gone to, I think we're starting to realize as an L&D organization, these aren't soft. These are actually extremely important things that are what we are calling durable skills for life, right? And when we see that 6 out of 8 qualifications are calling for this need for additional, investment in time and energy to build these skills for our lives, it really shows that this is something that we should be focusing a lot on, right? So I'll be talking a lot more about that in a little bit. So what are the consequences of this skills gap? Well, I mean, there's some obvious ones. There's unfilled work, so people aren't getting hired. The companies aren't filling those positions, right? So we end up with higher employment. There are fewer growth opportunities for the business to really take off and continue to grow. There's a lack of product innovation as teams kind of flounder, even ones that do exist, where skills gaps exist within an organization. Innovation isn't moving as quickly as it could be because of collaboration and communication issues, perhaps technical as well. And ultimately, there's a loss of profitability. So this is a serious issue that we need to address, right? So there are a number of different ways that organizations are addressing this gap. I've done a lot of research and just talking to Brightspace clients as well. Externally, what we're seeing is that a lot of groups traditionally were hiring within their communities, within the cities in which their headquarters are and things like that. Now we're starting to see they're hiring outside of their locale. It's more common for people to be working remotely. It gives you a larger talent pool as such, right? And a lot of companies are starting to now partner with educational institutions to identify areas for improvement in programs to go straight into work. So we see a lot of companies working with higher institutions to identify competencies that can be taught at that even public school phase, right into university, and then right into the workforce, which I think is a fantastic thing, right? I think there's a lot of potential for that because we don't want to just be learning these skills as we enter the workforce. Clearly, we want to learn these things throughout our entire lives. Internally, we're seeing more mentorship across an organization. So I know at D2L, we have a lot of mentorship programs and stuff. There's always opportunities to speak to senior members of the organization, to learn from different groups. Companies are providing a lot more incentives for people to continuously learn and to take courses, additional budget for training and things like that. They're retraining their own workers for new roles. And I can attest to this. I've had 3 or 4 different roles in the last 7 years as I continue to evolve my skill set and offer new things to my company. They're providing me the opportunity to grow into different areas, which I think is a great reciprocal relationship that we want to foster. And finally, they're investing in training of all shapes and sizes, which makes a company like ours, an e-learning company, very happy, especially since a lot of this is now online training that we're offering. So these are some of the things that we're doing to address the gap. There are other things that we can start to do. And we really do have a need in the workplace that is not being fulfilled to my mind. And this will bring me to my central thesis here in just a second. We need a way to track our current skill sets, right, to identify gaps. And these aren't things that we can necessarily say, oh, I have experience in that. We need some type of bona fide way to demonstrate that we have that skill set, right? We need institutions willing to offer training and to verify those skills. We need a way to verify our skill set to others to actually say, yes, I do have this ability to clearly communicate, collaborate, critical think, those things, problem solving. And we need a common language to verify our skills. One of the things I always find is I work with both higher ed institutions and corporate a lot. And so I end up seeing the differences in language that are being presented to the two different groups. And quite often I find that they're talking about the same things, but more often the language is so different that they can't see eye to eye on some of these things. So we need a way to demonstrate our skill set to future, current and future employees. We need a mindset of continuous self-improvement in ourselves and employees. I think we all know with automation coming out and you know, talk about large layoffs and things like that over the next decade as you know, different machines and robots and artificial intelligence starts to come in. We need that mindset of continuous self-improvement. I think this is one of the hardest things that we have as challenges for our learning and development group to try to instill in people, right? But I think there's ways that we can create systems of incentivization that encourages that continuous development. So people don't always understand the need to develop, but they're for people that are self-motivated and stuff, it seems intuitive. But for many people, they don't know where to turn to look at their next set of skills that they may need to be guided to. So to give you an example, I have two candidates here. So this is, imagine that you're part of a department, you're a manager that is hiring for a software developer position, right? On the left, you have Danielle Wilton. She graduated with her BSc in 2011. She has 5 years developer at Hooli, 3 years developer at a local startup company. And on the right, you have Sareka, and she also has very similar degree, very similar experience. She was at a different company. And so what we do a lot of the times when we're in these hiring modes is we jump to social media to kind of provide us some additional insights about these individuals, right? And so with Danielle, she's got 10 LinkedIn recommendations, and with Sareka, you can see that she has 5. The quantity of recommendations doesn't necessarily matter so much as the quality and the type of work experience, but you know, numbers are numbers for that reason. But then as you're looking at Sareka's LinkedIn profile, you also notice something. You see these little icons, right? And you see that she is fully Microsoft certified in the Office suite. You also notice that she has been taking some Node.js and Loopback advocate courses through IBM. You can see that she was attending a conference recently and she received this icon for this. You can also see that she's been taking an Open University course on career planning skills. So she's actually trying to invest in herself by taking courses that help her succeed in the workplace. And finally, you see these 2 other things that are listing her as somebody that has demonstrated proficiency in collaboration and creative problem solving. So you see all of these things, and then you look over at Danielle and you say, well, what does she have, right? And the simple question that I have for you is, based on what you're seeing here, who are you likely to interview first? And if your simple answer is, I would aim towards Sareka, you've just proved that open badges, that micro-credentials actually work, right? And so this is what I'd like to talk about today, is that throughout the rest of our lives, we are going to be slowly accumulating these things. These open badges are becoming more and more popular, and we're going to be taking these skill sets with us throughout the rest of our lives, these durable skills that we want to be able to prove, the technical skills, the software, and we're going to start getting recognition for those things, and we're going to be able to display those things and have them verified all through these open badges frameworks. So let's get to the meat of our presentation today. We're going to look at open badges, and the first thing to ask is just what are these things, right? So open badges are representation of a competency or achievement earned through participation, progression, or completion of learning. I really like this definition because what this says is that there is a competency or achievement that is earned not necessarily just because I finished something, but because I participated in something or I'm working my way through something. So there's different ways to kind of look at badges and the ways that we want to issue these things. Some are going to be based on completion, some can be based on measurement, and we'll look at some best practices around that shortly. But these open badges can be created by anyone, and within them, these are not just stickers for adults. all right? Within these, there's a series of data points. There's metadata within this that has to be filled out in order to create these badges. And these badges are verified by the issuer. So D2L, we have our Brightspace platform, and we can create badges within our awards tool, and I'll show you what that looks like very shortly. We are the issuer of that badge, and that can always be verified that this is actually legitimate, right? So these things are very, very difficult to create copies of and things like that, because we can always go back to the original source to verify that the person issuing or displaying that actually received that badge and what criteria they did through that. So if we look at the graphic on the right, we can see that there's a whole bunch of metadata that gets done, put in there. There's the badge name, the description, which basically describes what they've done to achieve those. So with the Microsoft ones, it would be Office and Excel and PowerPoint and things like that. The criteria by which they ended up receiving that, the image of the badge itself on the top, the issuer, which would be somebody like Brightspace, like D2L, or any other organization that can help you issue these badges, the actual receiver of that badge, any metadata tags that you want, and then come the alignment or the standards. I'm going to show you what that looks like in a little bit, but this is the important part, is what did they actually do to achieve that standard or that competency or that achievement? And this is the important part of this, is it is actually demonstrated proof that this person can actually do this. So that's the value of these things, right? We can also attach things like expiration dates and any type of evidence URL where we want to show videos of this person doing these things, or papers, or whatever it is that they've done to achieve these. So these things are great. They can be created quickly, easily. They can be added to your courses. You can issue these either through automated things within your LMS, or they can be manually issued, and they are all verifiable, and they can be shared across a variety of platforms. So again, I said, these things are going to be with us in the future. I've already started to collect badges that I will be taking with me throughout the rest of my life. All of us will be in the near future. And we can share these things. What we end up doing is taking them out of the place where we originally got them, putting them in a backpack, and then we can decide to share these to social media profiles. So LinkedIn is the popular choice right now, Facebook, any of the other popular social media sites that accept badges where you can display these things. People can look at your credentials and verify this information. So how do these work? So we have an issuer, which would be D2L Brightspace in this case. And we create that badge within a course, and we award that to an earner. So the earner is the person that has completed the task or achieved that through progression or whatever criteria you determine they should get that. And they receive that badge, and then they store them in these places called their digital backpacks. There's a lot of digital backpacks out there. There's Credly, Badger, Acclaim. Mozilla was the original, working with IMS Global on this. If you're interested in learning more about some of these graphics, this URL, you can download the PowerPoint here, and you see the URL there. IMS Global is the learning consortium that has taken over stewardship of the Open Badge framework, and they are a fantastic source of resources to see what other organizations are using these. How do I create these things? And so I strongly recommend you start there as an open source if you're looking to get started with this. So we have these displayers that will allow me to show my badge to other people. And at any point in time, these end users that are wanting to see the badges that I've earned can verify these by going back to those original issuers to say, how did this person earn these things? How can I see how they've done this as well? So what does this solve for us? So we're talking about the skills gap, we're talking about open badges, and I'm going to keep going back to the individual versus the organization, so because I think that's a really important distinction. So for the individual, this is a digital accreditation that you can take with you. So when I received my undergraduate or my master's of education, I got the piece of paper. I put that piece of paper somewhere. I can't tell you where it is today. I'm sure my wife probably put it somewhere safe because I'm terrible with paper. I haven't shown it to anybody in 20 years. You know, there's limited opportunity for somebody to say, can you show me your original diploma, right? And if there were, I wouldn't even know where to find this thing, right? Whereas this is a digital accreditation. So universities are starting to move towards creating these certificates of completion that are aligned to these open badges as well. And then these things become much more portable for us. They also become almost impossible to duplicate. So when I was down in Thailand, I saw that there was diploma mills where you could just pay $500 and get a teaching English as a second language certificate printed on the street. And I actually have that degree. I did it at the University of Cairo in Egypt through Cambridge University. I worked very hard to get that. I had a lot of sleepless nights going through that program, and I was appalled to see how easy it was for somebody else to get the exact same piece of paper that I had. It really, created a sense of bad justice in my mindset, right? So, anyways, these digital credentials will go with you, and they are verifiable, so that it takes away that opportunity for people to falsify their information and their credentials, right? For the individual, it provides others with insight into our professional development. So as I showed you at the example with Soreka, you can see all of the different things that she's been doing over the last several years to improve her skill set, right? Whereas Danielle, you didn't see, maybe she is doing a lot of these things too, but she's not getting the badge that actually demonstrates those things, right? So it demonstrates our continued efforts to improve ourselves, and it incentivizes us to pursue new skills. So I'm gonna run on a tangent just for a minute. As an instructional designer, one of my passions is also gamification. And open badges actually started from a concept. Video game players have been using badges for decades, right? And so if we look at these two last bullets, it incentivizes us to pursue new skills, and it acts as a currency in the workplace. So you see these New World of Works 21st century skills badges. If I have these and I'm displaying these, and some of my colleagues can see that I have these things too, there's that desire to be like, how did you get that? What did you do to earn that? Tell me about that experience, right? And it creates conversation, and it incentivizes people, right? And the reason why is because these types of things are not just for children, right? So to illustrate that, one of the things that I've heard a lot of organizations say, and this is the uphill battle that I've been fighting for the last 8 months this year, is talking to higher ed institutions and corporations where they're like, badges, that's silly, that's just a sticker for an adult, nobody cares about these things. And I want to say that there is a psychological mindset that we all have within us, that we want to actually achieve things, right? And we want demonstration of that achievement, right? And so I'd like to introduce you to three people. This is David, Laura, and Shubham, and they are three wonderful individuals that work on my team, creating courses for our Brightspace customers. And every day at lunch, they come to this social area, and you can see that they all have their phones right in front of them. And every day they turn on Pokemon Go, right? And you can see this is not, a very adult-looking game. What some people would say would be adult-looking game. The object of the game is to grab this ball, flick it towards that little Pikachu there, and capture that animal, right? So the ball opens up, captures the animal, and that creature is now yours, right? And I'm fascinated. I ask a lot of questions of David and Lauren Shubham every day. They've brought in other members of their team to now be joining in this, and they're running around town capturing these Pokemon characters throughout the week as well, right? So they're getting social activities, they're getting these things, right? Just by participating in this game. And this is an interesting phenomenon. They're willing to take an hour at minimum every single day to participate in this, right? And these are not children. These are adults that are working in software companies, doing advanced computer programming and stuff, right? So the other illustration that I'd just like to point out is, and this is what they're actually going for in a lot of these cases, are these medals that they're earning, right? So they capture the Pokemon, but they're also earning medals, right? And so video games have been doing this for a long time, where we figured out that you can get a nice little dopamine hit where when you challenge somebody, you have to have some type of reward system in place in order to validate their efforts, right? Not everybody needs this, but a lot of people are highly motivated by that little trophy they get, whatever it is, right? And to illustrate that further, if any of you play Angry Birds, you understand the badging system with that is the 3-star system, right? My mother is now in the top 10 in the world at Angry Birds. She is actually amongst the millions and millions of people around the globe. She retired and she suddenly started playing Angry Birds, and she is now one of the top players in the entire world because she has absolutely obsessed with getting that third star. She will play a single level for hours just to get that third star and continue to learn how to evolve through this game and figure out the strategies that the game developers are doing. That's a really interesting thing to look at, because this is an individual that has advanced university degrees, was a manager and a leader in her company for many years, and yet she's obsessed with this achievement standard, right? And the reason why is that there's this theory in video game design called Bartle's player types, right? And we all fit. This is much like a DISC or Myers-Briggs, where we all kind of fit into these different categories. Some of us are killers, some of us are achievers, some of us are socializers, and some of us are explorers. So some people enjoy playing games because they like to overwhelm their opponents and win the game no matter what at all costs, right? And that's your typical killer. Your achiever is one that is just highly motivated by accumulating and getting things that other people don't have. So David, the gentleman in the previous picture, was always gloating that he had certain Pokemon. And when Laura would get that one, it didn't matter to him anymore that he had that thing. Even though he'd achieved that badge, it didn't matter because it wasn't unique to him anymore, right? And then you've got socializers who just enjoy playing games because they like the social dynamic of that game, right? And finally, the explorers like myself, I play a video game. The first thing I do is I go to the edges of the border to see how big this thing is, to see if I can go through all find the secret levels, those types of things, right? The vast majority of people, studies will show, is that 80% of people are socializers. We play games because we want to interact with each other, right? But that's not to say, much like disc training, we're never one thing only. We tend to be, aspects of all of the different personality traits, right? And so a lot of us are in that achievement category here, right? And that's where these badges can really come in play. My mother is a 100% achiever, with a bit of an element of a socializer. She doesn't talk much through her games, but man, she really goes for those 3 stars every single time. We can use that as learning and development experts to start to create badges that create incentives. And we've seen this time and time again at D2L, where organizations that start to pick up these badges, suddenly their course retention rates, their course completion rates, and their course enrollment rates go through the roof, because people are starting to see that there is some type of thing that is issued to them at the end of it that demonstrates that thing which they are trying to achieve, right? And that's that competency, that skill set, whatever the course objectives are, right? So I'm going to come back to this again and again and throughout the presentation. I know this was a bit of an aside, but this is a really important aspect. Many people think that badges should just be based on completion. I think there's a lot of value in understanding the psychological incentive that these badges can promote within an organization, and that you can motivate teams like sales teams through things like leaderboards, right? So you can have a leaderboard dashboard on the front of your LMS page, and the top 3 people are displayed getting different badges and stuff, and it will incentivize people to actually go take additional courses, learn new things, contribute more to the overall learning culture at your organization. So getting back to the organization, what does this solve for them? So this identifies areas for improvement. So one of the things that this is great for is to see what skills people are coming into the role with. If right now, because badges are just taking off en masse, we're not seeing this a lot, but I can imagine in the next 10 years, if all of us are really jumping on board with this and we're all starting to create badges and we're all sharing these things out, as employees enter the workforce, we can start to see the different skill sets that they have, right? And we can see what gaps that they might have. As a manager, I can make recommendations for those types of courses that they could start to take, right? So it can show people where their gaps are and how they can address those. It increases output and productivity simply by having that achievement status that I mentioned just a few moments ago, by demonstrating things like leaderboards and stuff to get people incentivized to go out. It really demonstrates a culture of learning, which is, again, a buzzword I've been hearing for the last few years as people try to define what a culture of learning looks like at an organization. I really think that badges are a great way to kind of say that there is this currency in the workplace. We are taking it seriously, that we want our employees to improve and to continue to learn, and this is demonstration of that, right? It can help to identify hidden talents among our employees as well. So as we start to look at our employees and start to see the badges they've earned, maybe we'll start to see things that it's like, oh, Jeff has this background in audio engineering. He has this badge. I wonder what that's related to, right? And so we can start to ask questions about the different skill sets that people have and how we can best utilize those talents within the organization. It identifies a distribution of talent and gaps. So the IBM digital credentials that you're seeing here, IBM did an interesting thing. They did a heat map of all of their employees to see where those badges actually existed. And what they were able to see when they looked at their entire global workforce is that there are certain areas where these badges are prominently displayed, and there are areas where there's certain skill sets that seem to be lacking, right? And this can have, ramifications in that region for overall productivity and stuff, right? So they're starting to use badges as a more global data kind of collection to see, where are the gaps that we have as an organization, not just as individuals, which is really fascinating, I thought. And finally, across sectors, this helps create alignment with skills needed for continuous improvement. So if we start to look at the higher ed institutions working with the corporations, we can start to see how creating badges continuously through somebody's career can really help them further their skills gap. So who's using these already? As I already mentioned, K-12 colleges, universities, they're all using them. Purdue University has been on this bandwagon for a very long time. Which is great to see. Professional organizations, I love these World Chefs culinary badges. One of the things I like about these is that they just look professional, right? These look like something that I would want to earn. So it's not just an ugly little medal or something like that. This actually has a legitimate look and feel to it. Proper graphic design is an important part of these badges, I think. And finally, corporations, companies like Microsoft, IBM that I've already shown you. Lots of the top tech companies are all moving towards badges and using them internally, but also offering certifications to companies. And you can go onto the Microsoft Badges website and you can start to demonstrate your capabilities and earn these badges yourself just on your own time. Yeah, you don't need a company to kind of endorse that or anything. So I'm going to ask Alec if he could just give me control for a moment. And I'm going to share my screen. So what you're looking at right now is Brightspace. This is our learning platform. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how easy it is to create an award. All right. So this is called our awards tool because we've divided awards into two different categories. You can see these are the different badges that exist. So these are the open badges. We also issue certificates because a lot of our organizations work with higher ed institutions and even a lot of membership organizations that want to issue certificates and not just badges. They operate the same way. They still have the same metadata included. They can still be displayed the same way through social media platforms, but it just gives a slightly different level of distinction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an award to this course. I'm going to give it a name, and what I did is, just to save you all time, I created this badge. I called this badge Groovability. Groovability, to my mind, is somebody that fits into the groove at an organization. They demonstrate workplace collaboration skills, effective communication, those types of things. So what I can do is just quickly copy and paste these into my browser here. So this is a message that gets displayed to that learner describing what they've earned. This is level 1. So if you look here, I created this in PowerPoint in about 5 minutes. It's really, really simple. You're just inserting shapes and doing different things. I found a graphic online that I could use that was Creative Commons. And then what I've done is I've added this feature here. You can see I've got 3 different stars, only one of them's filled out. So this is like that Angry Birds thing that I was sharing about my mother earlier. We can end up having multiple levels of badges, right? So badges don't just have to be single entities that are just earned once. You can have graduated levels of proficiency, right? And so in this case, this is level 1 of Groovability. So this person has recently demonstrated this. I can decide whether I want to issue a badge or certificate. I make this available to all of my courses. So as a L&D leader, if I want to make sure that all onboarding programs at my organization have this, I can do that. I can also share this with other course creators within my organization, or I can just restrict it to my immediate org unit. One of the great features about badges is that you can actually set up expiry dates, right? So if they are demonstrating something like communication or collaboration, that's not likely to expire, right? But if they are earning a health and safety series of competency badges, and you want them to take that compliance course year after year after year, the LMSs can now automate those things, right? So I can pick a fixed date if everybody's taking these at the same time, or I can make it a relative time period after they've earned that. So I can make that, one year from now, this badge will expire. So they no longer have that health and safety badge. And then I can send out an automated email to them that notifies them of, 30 days or whatever frequency you want that to be, right? So it's a really great way to kind of automate some of that compliance stuff that HR doesn't necessarily want to manage too much, and let the LMS do some of the automating. So we want to upload a new icon. So this is the place where I can add this. And there's my Groovy level 1. I just took a screenshot of it earlier. So now I've got a little preview of it. And this is the issuer information. So this never needs to be changed. This is just the LMS that created this, Brightspace. So I'm going to hit save and close. And now I've got this badge. This has officially been created within this course. And now what I need to do after that is just a few other simple things. We've created credit systems. So what I love about this is professional organizations that require ongoing professional development units, or PDUs. You can add point values to these things, so you can make them worth whatever point value you want based on the badges that they're earning. So if they're attending a conference, you can issue a badge that's worth X number of points towards their professional development unit at the end of the year. We can also, this can also be added to a leaderboard or something like that if you're into the competitive side of these things. You can also award or hide these awards from other people so that they don't always know which awards are available in each of the courses, which I think is a really important thing. Surprise is a really important element of video game theory within issuing reward systems, right? And so if everybody can see everything that's available, they may not always feel that level of dopamine hit that they would get from suddenly this badge popping up going, congratulations, you've achieved this, right? So it's nice to kind of hide these once in a while. Brightspace has a really powerful set of what we call release conditions. This is basically criteria that you need to achieve in order to unlock something, right? So in this case, I can attach this to a whole series of different things, other awards that I have earned. So you can create what we call meta badges, some of our checklist tools, competency structure within the Brightspace platform. So I can tie these to these competencies that we can set up in the background. So as people achieve these things, they get these awards. Content, discussions, assignments, grades, quizzes, all the different types of things you would expect to see in any modern day LMS. So if I decide I want to attach this to some type of assignment, I can go in here and I can choose the weekly journal. So maybe I'm running an onboarding program for a new employee, and each week I just want them to reflect on their action, right? Which is an important andragogical concept. And so I want them to be able to, every time they submit that, maybe I don't want to do it on submission. Maybe I'd rather have it on a score of an associated rubric that I have for that one, right? So I have that, and then I select the actual rubric that I've already created. So it's not just based on the fact that they've completed something, it's based on the fact that they've submitted it, I've evaluated it and said, yes, this is a quality thing that is demonstrating these competencies. So again, not just creating these things based on completion, because that tends to be fairly simplistic in its design approach. So if you post a discussion, you get a badge, right? People will not value those as much as if they have to work through something and then you're basing it on measurement. Again, you don't get that third star until you've knocked down all those piggies properly. And then I can assign, different types of scoring and criteria. And then I hit create. Now you can see this is the release condition that's now been created, and I still have the option to add more. So I can end up saying that you don't get the Groovability badge until you've submitted your reflection journal as part of a new employee program. You also have to pass the compliance course, and I also have to be able to check whatever criteria else within the LMS itself, right? So for now, I'm just going to say this is done. One of the other things that's great is I can go in and, some of these soft skills or durable skills, they're not always the easiest thing to be able to measure, right? So how do I know if somebody's a good communicator? Is there a way that I can effectively create a quiz that demonstrates that? And I think this is where we want to start to be able to issue badges based on performance objectives that go beyond just what an LMS can really set a release condition to. And so in this case, what I can do is I can go in and I can see Andrew here, and I can actually issue this badge manually. So I can say that he gets this one, and then right here is where you see I can add in the reward criteria. So what did he do to actually achieve this badge? And this is what gets recorded as part of the metadata within that badge, so that when he shares this out with the rest of the world, people can see what criteria did he demonstrate to actually achieve that. So I did just hit issue. Andrew, the next time he logs into the LMS, will actually get a notification saying he's received this badge. He'll get that dopamine hit and think, all right. And in my messaging and Groovability, I told him, there's several other levels, so keep trying and working harder towards the next level. So this is what badges end up looking like. There's, again, ways that we can share these out. So I can share these to a portfolio. We have an e-portfolio part of our LMS solution, but I can also hit this button and open this up into my digital backpack. And this is where I can take these badges out of the actual LMS and start to store them in places like an Open Passport or Mozilla Backpack, Credly, Acclaim, many of the ones I mentioned earlier. And this is a great example, right? So this is that pipetting one for Purdue University that I mentioned earlier. And this woman, Amanda Rose Riley, achieved this in September 2014. And what she's earned is the pipetting badge. And there's actually a video of her pipetting, right? So this is her demonstrating this competency right before our eyes. So if she gets this badge and I think, well, how did she earn that? I'm actually seeing a video of how she did this, right? Which is fantastic. This is the way that we can start to do these things in the future, is we can have video demonstrations, we can have different surveys and things like that, quizzing. All of this stuff can end up getting recorded as part of our evidence for why we have earned these things, which I think is fantastic. This is really where it takes it beyond that paper degree. Maybe I don't know what types of courses that person earned to actually get that degree and stuff. This is actual physical evidence that I can see this woman knows how to do this work, right? So I'll stop there and we'll just jump back into the presentation. I've got a few more minutes here. So if you could set me up again, Alec, that would be great. Thank you. So there's my Groovability badge. So how can we receive these? There's a lot of organizations creating these, as I mentioned before, conferences, certification programs. You can get these for volunteering. I think that's a great way. Volunteer organizations can start to share that this person's put in 1,000 hours in a library, right? That's got to be, worth something for your career, So that I think as we start to see more and more organizations recognizing the value of these micro-credentials, nano degrees, whatever terminology you want to use, we can start to see all this bubble kind of expand from places that are actually issuing these, right? So some instructional design best practices. What badges do we want to create, right? So the graphic here by Brian Mathers, which is just great, talks about, there's membership organizations, there's mastery, there's capability, there's participation. We don't want to just create completion badges, right? And so one of the things that I'd invite you to explore is if you're in HR and this is part of your regular workflow, what do we value as an organization? What skill sets do we need for some of these roles now and in the future, right? And as you ask yourself these questions, these are the types of competencies that you're going to start to think, okay, these are the things that we need people to be able to do, both again now and in the future. So let's start to create badge systems. And again, not just one-off badges, but again, graduated levels of badges. And create these based on completion of some things, measurement of some things, progress of some things, experience, right? One of the things I think I've noticed with a lot of people is if a lot of the things we do, if we believe in this 70-20-10 model of corporate learning, is that most of what we end up learning through our jobs ends up happening during the projects, during the things that we're doing in our day-to-day lives, right? And yet none of that actually gets recognized as formalized learning, right? I think we actually have a lot more skills that we just don't have the ability to demonstrate. We've earned these competencies through the daily project work we do, but because we didn't complete a test at the end of it and get a badge, there's no way to kind of prove that, right? And I think that's one of the ways that we can start to address the skills gap is by having people, as they complete different tasks, as they stretch themselves into new roles, as they say, I want to take on this project, but I don't know how to do these things. Managers and different L&D groups can work together to kind of create a series of badges within an organization that's starting to recognize their progress through those areas and continue to incentivize them to actually do those things. So I have a top 7 tips for considering different badge types as you're going. So we all have different motivations. Some of us, as I mentioned with the Bartles player types, are competitive by nature. Some of us are more collaborative and social. And we want to have a balance of badges that rewards that, right? So even the top salespeople that are highly competitive still need to be collaborative in their workforce, right? I deal with salespeople on a daily basis, and I find them all wonderful for being, collaborative. They thankfully hire at D2L for that type of skill set, as well as the competitive nature of those individuals, right? And so we want to have that balance of badges within our organization that doesn't just reward the top killers and achievers, but also the socializers and the explorers, the dream biggers, such as myself as well, right? And we want to create badges that represent organizational values, right? So these are the things that we value at our company. These are the badges we're going to be issuing. When you start to achieve all these things, you can start to get further incentives. Consider technical and interpersonal skills. So we talked about the 4 C's. Not everyone should get the same badges. So if we all get the same participation award, what does that mean psychologically to us? What's the value of that thing if everybody gets it, right? So there should be some badges that are only applied to certain departments, to certain regions, even possibly if you're a global organization. And so consider that within your idea is that if you start to issue this to everybody, it will dilute its value overall. We want to minimize completion and maximize performance. Performance is how we demonstrate those competencies and skills that we're trying to address through issuing these badges. Some badges may need to be manually issued. So I showed you earlier how we do that in Brightspace, and it's a very simple process. And then create meta badges that are challenging to get. So to illustrate what I mean by what we call a meta badge, it's just a great word, first of all. So I complete a course and I get my collaborative badge. And then I complete another section of that course and I get my communication. Then I can complete another one and I get my critical thinking. And then one final course and I get my, I always forget the 4th C. Anyways, once I receive all 4 of those badges, then I end up getting the 4C badge, right? So this is what we call a meta badge. It's an accumulation of different badges that lead up to a higher level badge, right? And if we think about competency structures, there are different competencies that make up an overall competency, overall proficiency in communication, right? So communication is not just one set of competencies, it's made up of dozens and dozens in reality, right? A great example of this is through the Colorado State University. They have some really, really great use of badges where, you can see the one here is there's personal branding, there's several different business skills, and each time you do this, you get a star, and that star leads to one of these 3 badges, which leads you to management building blocks. So Colorado State University has this management building course, and then this badge, this one little star here ends up leading to here, and you can see there's still one other one to earn, right? So what you're seeing here is a series of competencies that these people have earned that have led up to this meta badge that is leading up to an even higher meta badge, which is fantastic. This is a great way to kind of be able to cascade our competencies in a visual way using these badges. So don't just create one-off badges, create multiple meta badges as well to really amplify people's success and incentive to go complete these things. So I'll just show you some of the different badges we have at D2L, and then we'll pause there and I'll take some questions because I know we're running out of time. So we have professional development badges that we have at D2L. So as an instructional designer, I always want to make sure I'm at the top of the list for knowledge about accessibility. I want to make sure all of the courses I design fully include everybody throughout the learning process. And so this is a badge for my own professional development that I can take. We also have compliance courses, so security essentials. Obviously, at a software company, we would need to be well versed in that. Achievement badges, so we have an internal reward system where peers can recognize one another, and in 2016 I received 2 of those from my peers that thought I was going above and beyond our normal everyday life and really demonstrating D2L's vision. And then finally, we can create fun badges. So every year we have a chili cook-off contest at headquarters. The whole place stinks for several days afterwards in a wonderful way. And every year I win the best vegetarian chili con section. 3 years in a row now, I'm very proud to say. And every year I get this badge, and it's not, this isn't something I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life. It doesn't have to be, right? We can choose as individuals which badges we're actually going to share with the rest of the world, which ones we want to put on our LinkedIn profiles, which ones we'll just leave in the LMS, and which ones we'll, put in our backpack and save for a later date, possibly, right? So again, I'd invite your organization to explore different types of badges. Some can be for the professional development, micro-credentialing. Some should just be, more based on the video game notion of reward systems for participation in things and stuff, right? So I'll stop there and we'll take questions for the next 10 minutes.
All right, Jeff, perfect. Thank you. We are going to get into some questions here. We already have a bunch of them in, but don't hesitate to submit yours. We're not going to be able to get to all of these, so please bear with me as I look through here. This first one that I have is going to come from Ellen. Ellen's question is, I work in an area that is intensely team-oriented. When I have brought up the concept of badging, many people are interested but want to know how it works among teams. Do you have any customers who have implemented badging with a similar culture?
That's a good question. Most of the organizations we're working with right now on badges are individuals. So we're looking at a lot of membership organizations. These would be individual lawyers, individual marketing professionals, accountants, those types of people. And so it's always an individual basis. So maybe give me a few minutes and I'll just kind of comb my brain and see if I can think of something in the meantime. But I would say yes, I just can't think of any off the top of my head, unfortunately.
All right, perfect. We're going to move on to the next one then. So this one comes from Denise. Denise's question is, do you recommend a minimum amount of hours required to earn a micro-credential or a badge? I've heard 10 hours was a minimum.
I wouldn't say that there's any hard and fast rule. I think if you can demonstrate proficiency in something and earn a badge, we see this a lot with like prior learning assessments where sometimes people just want to earn the badge so that they can add that to their list, right? If you're developing a new skill, I would say that the badge, the micro-credential largely resides, the length of time it'll take is based on the complexity of the competency and how high up it is, right? So if we're looking at a meta badge that is a subset of 6 different badges, you would definitely need to spend way more than 10 hours, right? Whereas if it's just a simple 1-hour compliance course on privacy or social media usage or something like that, and you have a series of smaller badges, some of those can be earned in much faster ways, right? So if you want to issue a Twitter badge to an organization so that they know the proper usage of Twitter within their organization, that would be something that shouldn't take 10 hours, I would say. So I guess it depends on what your definition of a micro-credential is and whether that has an actual fixed notion of a set of competencies that would take a specific number of hours to complete. But to me, it's a much more flexible thing, personally.
Okay, great. Let's go with this one, and I apologize if I mispronounce this name, but Ramsamy. The question is, can we accumulate the badges towards, say, achieving a professional qualification? So can you kind of attach badges to that?
Yeah, and so up in Canada here, we're working with the professional accountants, professional nurses, professional financial planners, professional marketers, and we're using badges for all of those professions, right? So there's these year-long programs that these individuals are taking as they enter their field. None of these are mandatory, but for the Chartered Marketing Association, for example, we can create a series of badges through the different courses that they have to take in order to become a designated chartered marketer. And throughout that, we have a series of competency structures that are set up and a series of badges that are tied to some of the higher level competencies. So one of the things I didn't mention that I think is really important, if you go out and create 100 badges, you have a lot of maintenance over that over the next time. What if your competency structure changes and you suddenly need to go back and start revising some of these, right? The more and more badges you start to create, the more and more diluted these may become as well, right? So I would say look at your higher level competency structures within that professional certification, and those are the things that you end up creating badges on, not necessarily the sixth level granular learning objectives that you're looking at in each of the weekly modules or something like that.
All right, perfect. This one here is a question, and I always say this, but it's a question we get all the time on these webinars about certain programs or ideas. So this comes from Sheila, and Sheila's question is, how do you get buy-in to begin with open badges from senior leaders in a conservative industry?
So the reason why I start with that story about Sureka and Danielle is that I think it really illustrates the power of this, right? Like you're going to interview Sureka first because you see those things, right? And if we want to start to be able to properly evaluate, there's a section of my PowerPoint that I didn't get to here where I'm talking about, a skills-based assessment that we can do and take courses and things. We'll have to save that for another webinar. But to get buy-in, you need to demonstrate that value, that it's like these things actually have some type of worth within the organization, that people are incentivized by that. That's also why I bring in the gamification concepts here. You actually see the uptake, right? And there's a lot of universities and corporations are starting to release the data that they've been collecting on these things, and they're seeing remarkable results just by incorporating these badges, right? So I don't want to call out specific D2L clients because I want to respect their privacy with their information, but we are seeing a large uptake in, as I mentioned earlier, enrollment within courses, retention within those courses, and then completion within those courses. So we've all seen that MOOCs exist out there and that 30,000 people will sign up and 26 will finish, kind of thing, right? Part of that is maybe because there isn't a proper reward system built into this, right? So that people feel that ongoing progress and stuff, right? So I'm not saying that that's the reason, but that's potentially one of the many reasons why MOOCs kind of have that higher attrition rate, right? So badges can actually help solve some of those issues. Obviously not all of those issues, but a few of them along the way. So I think demonstrating, finding the research from some of the corporations like IBM that are now publishing a lot of their material and the results of what they're finding successful about badges. Google has a lot of information out on it too about why they're investing so much in this, and reporting those back to your organization. And then just talking about it from a human perspective. People are incentivized by these things. They will, especially if you tie them to things like end of year bonuses or promotions, people that can demonstrate their continuous development should be rewarded.
All right, perfect. Jeff, that's actually going to be all the time we have for questions. We are coming up on the top of the hour, and I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. So thank you, first and foremost, for taking the time to be with us today. And thanks again to everybody on the line in the audience. So we were not able to get to all these questions, unfortunately, but we do have them all recorded. So thank you for your participation in that. I also want to thank D2L for sponsoring today's webinar. It's always a pleasure to work with D2L. I've worked with D2L on these webinars quite often here in the past couple of years, and we always appreciate their support, and they're always a pleasure to work with. So thank you again to D2L. Again, thanks Jeff, thanks everybody on the line, and thanks D2L. We'll see you all back here for our next CLO webinar taking place this coming Tuesday, August 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, titled CLO Survey, Defining and Mapping Effective High-Stakes Learning. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.